So I've certainly used the XTOOL D1 diode laser, the 10 watt version, around my shop for a couple of projects, and you've seen some videos here. I also did a review, which I'll link up above here if you're interested. Go watch that. And that laser is by far the best diode laser I've tried. It works really well, and the one I got came with a basic rotary attachment, which I also thought was pretty awesome. But the good people at XTOOL sent me a new rotary attachment, the RA2 Pro, and said this is the best rotary attachment ever, and I thought I'd give it a try. So in this video, what I want to do is do a quick review on that. I'll try it with a few basic pieces of software to see how it works, maybe a couple of different diode lasers. So if you're interested in finding out if this is the absolute best rotary tool ever, then stick around. How's it going, everybody? Steve here, and welcome back to the shop. And as I mentioned, the XTOOL people sent me a new rotary attachment, which they think is the best one on the market today, called the RA2 Pro, which is a 4-in-1 rotary attachment. And in this video, we'll find out what those 4 things are, but certainly one of them is to replace the existing rotary that came with my laser. And so we'll try that, but we'll try some of the other things, and we'll kind of come up with a real end-to-end push here. We'll test a bunch of things and see what it looks like. And in the end, we'll make an assessment on whether it actually is the best rotary attachment ever. Now, what I'm going to do is certainly use the D1 to start. Probably start with Lightburn, because that's my laser software of choice. You can also use LaserBox Basic, which comes with the XTOOL. That will work without question. It certainly worked with the original rotary attachment as well, but we'll use Lightburn just because a lot of people use it and it's pretty popular. So we'll do that in addition to the D1 and maybe another diode laser, just to see if it can do what XTOOL claims, which is work with different lasers. And we'll do a final assessment, and you can make a decision on whether you should buy one of these if you have a diode laser. So let's get going. So I'll dispense with the typical unboxing and assembly. There are lots of videos already for the RA2 Pro that do that. And honestly, there's not a lot to assemble here anyway. But what I will do is initially do a comparison here of this RA2 Pro side by side with the original rotary. And you can see they're very similar. There's slight size differences. The RA2 Pro is a little bit larger and just seems a bit bulkier in general. Now, the second attachment here is the chuck, which I can't stress enough is the most important capability. It makes this unique in the diode space. I don't know of another chuck based rotary that is available for another diode laser. There might be one, but I haven't seen one. And what that allows you to do is do a lot more odd shaped things. So, and by that I mean tapered. So typically glasses, if you're doing engraving on a water glass or something, they tend to be tapered so they're not level, and the existing rotary attachment couldn't handle that. So what the chuck allows you to do is basically clamp onto that glass, and it comes with 2 different sizes of chuck teeth, a small set and a larger set. And so you can do pretty big things. But the other aspect here, the RA2 Pro comes with an end leveler as well, and you can see it's a couple of rollers, and you can adjust it up and down. And one of the things it lets you do is level those tapered glasses so that you can do a proper engrave on them, and that's a very nice feature. So next on the list here of kind of important features are the screw-in pins, and they screw into the 3 teeth on the chuck. And what they allow you to do is hold objects that don't have necessarily a flat end that the chuck can grab. So think of things like a ball or a Christmas decoration or even an egg. And it will hold those. Of course, with the egg, you want to be really gentle, but there's that. And finally, this last biggest component here is this end roller, which for things that might be a little odder shape, you can push them up against this roller. It's got a bearing in it, and items will stay intact while you roll them, and it seems to work pretty well as well. So I'll show you all of these. We'll do something challenging just to see what it looks like, and we'll get going. So to get started here, you obviously connect the rotary attachment, the RA2 Pro, into the laser. And I'm using the XTOOL D1, so everything should just work fine here. Now I need to enable that, and the way I did that, I've already done it here, but I'll show you, is I selected roller because I'm using the roller attachment first. I enabled rotary, and it's obviously on the Z-axis here. I set the millimeters per rotation to 32 and the roller diameter to 17. Now, honestly, I played around with these, and I'll tell you why in a second. Changing these values doesn't seem to do a whole lot, but it may. We'll see what happens. It seems like the D1 kind of has this hard-coded, which gets to the problem I ran into, because I had set a test object that I had, which was 65 millimeters in diameter, and when I hit the test, rather than doing a rotation, it did almost 2 rotations, and I was really confused because everything looked like it was configured the way XTOOL said it should be. And I left here. I went to back to the Lightburn main screen, and I said, move 100 millimeters on the Z axis, and I set the speed to something reasonable. And when I did the rotation, it did the same thing. It moved about 1.75 times further than I thought it was going to, which I found very odd. And I found it odd enough actually to get XTOOL involved. And they said, no, everything should be configured that way. But they didn't really explain why doing manual operations seemed to make it go further. So it looks to me like they did a firmware update recently on the D1, and that seems to be causing that confusion. It just really kind of zonked me out for a day, and I had to go think about this. But what I can tell you is, if you take an image, and we'll just grab one here. If I take an image and load it in, if I set the size to something, in this case, the height here is about 49 millimeters. In fact, we'll make it 49. And it will actually be 49 when you do the engrave. So don't panic, but it is strange. And if you're trying to do manual operations, this will confuse you to no end. So use that precautionary note. Anyway, that's the setup, and we're pretty much ready to go. We could frame this and go take a look at the laser, and it would be ready to engrave here. All right, before we move on here, just a bit of a news flash around the RA2 Pro problem I was having with Lightburn. The XTOOL folks got back to me, and thank you for that. They provided this technical note, and I'll put a link to this in the description, which basically deals with some of the challenges around this firmware version 003, and you can find out what version you're running if you go to LaserBox Basic and hit the device information on the side there, and it will tell you what version you're running. This tech note is basically a way for you to put a different version of the firmware back onto your D1. In this case, they will tell you how to put 002 on here instead of 003. 003 was the one that seemed to impact this. So what they will tell you to do is how to do that manual update. And you can see here in step 2, it's a manual update, where you can go to that site and pull any release of the firmware you want, and then you can walk through these steps below here to tell you how to configure it. So if you are having problems, or you really want accurate movement, if you're doing manual operations, feel free to follow this. It seems to work okay. So with that, we can carry on. All right, so let's take a look at a few examples now using all of the tools of the RA2 Pro. The first one here is just the standard rollers. This would be the same as any other rotary attachment that you might hook to this or any other laser. And all I did was take just a water bottle and try it on the rollers with a you know, a typical slogan, my channel logo. So you can see it does actually a really nice job there. This is obviously speeded up quite a bit, but it did a fantastic job of this engrave, and you know, just impressive. Now, next example here, we're going to do a glass, and this is a tapered glass. So I'm using those end rollers. And first thing you want to do is level the end roller, so you can drop this little provided level on and get it level. Now what I did was I wrapped an elastic around the end so that it doesn't slide around on the rollers. And again, just do an engrave of a logo, one of my customers' logos in this case, and the spray that's on the glass here is just standard Surmark. You could also use molybdenum spray or Galvo spray. Anything really will work here. Surmark is what I had handy, so I chose to use that. And you can see it does a great job on the glass. And once you clean this off, you'll get a nice look there. Next is something that's a little more oddly shaped, and this is something you can't do with any other rotary attachment. So I'm using that end pivot and those 3 pins that go into the chuck, and I just took a standard Christmas ball here and we'll engrave a snowflake on it. So typical, you set it up, remember to focus, and just let it go, and you can see it does a pretty nice job of that as well. Now what I did notice here is the scale when you set up the rotary that the XTOOL folks provide for you doesn't seem to be right. So you know, you may notice that some of these come out in a little strange shape. They're not perfectly round, but you can do that calculation and make that change yourself. Anyway, those are the samples, and you know, hopefully that kind of shows you you know, the things that the RA2 Pro can do. And you can see everything here was really simple to set up, and the results are spectacular. So let's move on. So now let's look at a couple of things I really like about the RA2 Pro and a few things I think maybe they could improve on. On the Pro side, definitely great flexibility. You can engrave pretty much anything that has to turn to do an engrave on the RA2 Pro. It is pretty easy to set up. There's almost nothing to do when you take it out of the box. And it works with pretty much every laser, and that includes a lot of CO2 lasers. Certainly anything that uses Lightburn or LaserBox Pro, LaserBox Basic, those will all work. On the con side, there are just lots of parts, and I know this is a bit tedious, but there's quite a few screws. There's the 3 pins. There's 6 chuck pieces. It's a lot, and you can solve this problem basically keeping it in some sort of container so you don't lose the screws. But I don't even know how you could fix that. But there are just definitely things that could easily get lost. Second on the list, this RA2 Pro works great with LaserBox Basic, which you can download if you have an XTOOL D1. There is a bit more tedium with Lightburn though, and that may be as much of a challenge with Lightburn as it is with the RA2 Pro. But I did have a few challenges there just to get things up and running in a predictable way. Nothing impossible, but it just seemed harder than it should be. And last on this list, if you are planning on engraving mugs with handles, coffee cups, whatnot, there are definitely some challenges with that. And basically what you end up having to do is take the base that the chuck is mounted on and turn it around so that the chuck is pointed in the opposite direction. Then you need to put some weight on the plate to keep everything level. Now what I plan to do is I'll do a follow-up video, because there was a viewer who asked specifically about engraving mugs and things with handles. So I'll do one of those following up here, call it RA2 Pro Part 2. But I didn't feel like it was worth stretching out this video, which is actually a review, to do that. And in that second video, I'll also do some special work around CO2 lasers. I'll only use a CO2 laser in that video just to show you how you could also hook this up, say with a Muse 3D. Anyway, there's the pros and cons. At the end of the day, this is definitely a rotary attachment that is second to none. It's all metal. You're going to want one of these if you're doing anything rotary for any laser, honestly. So that's it. So that's the RA2 Pro, which, as you can see, works as advertised. And in fact, this rotary attachment is awesome. It's the best rotary attachment I've seen for any laser, let alone the XTOOL D1. Now, if you are in the market for a rotary attachment for your diode laser, this will work regardless of who made your laser. You might want to consider picking one up. Also, if you have a CO2 laser, particularly a laser that runs Lightburn software, you saw here that it was actually pretty easy to get that configured. And, you do the same rotary setup that we did initially for the D1. We do a bit more math to get it right, but it works. Now, if you have something like an FSL laser, a Muse 3D, for example, that uses Retina Engrave 3, you don't actually have the ability to control the number of steps per revolution of the rollers. So you have to kind of fake this in your drawing program. And really what that means is you just scale down the Y direction of the thing you're trying to engrave and send it over to Retina Engrave 3. Now, it certainly looks weird, but when you do the engrave, it comes out proper if the scale is calculated properly. And, you can certainly use this with an FSL laser as well. And in fact, for a lot more functionality, this rotary attachment is about half the price of the one FSL is selling. So you might want to consider it if you're looking for an option there. Anyway, we'll wind the video down. I'll put a link to the XTOOL D1 and the RA2 Pro down in the description. Now, that's an affiliate link, so if you buy from there, you're helping out the channel. Other than that, get out there and make your world, and I'll see you next time.